Welcome and congratulations. You found the Satori Show with host Amy Satori, your spirit guide to the unseen world. Amy's ability to communicate with and interpret for spirits in that world is simply amazing. Her mission is to use this gift to help people understand what's happening in their life so they can take positive action to move forward. So let's tap into this unseen world together and discover what our friends and loved ones on the other side have to say about our health, love, relationships, our pets, our destiny, and so much more. I hope you'll join me, Kevin McDonald, as we delve into our lives and the world we live in right now on The Satori Show. And welcome to another episode of The Satori Show, everyone, with your host, Amy Satori, who is with me right now. Amy, how are you? How's the weather in Boulder today?
You know, there's white stuff all around today. It's a beautiful sunny day, but there's definitely some cold white stuff. It's not going to last.
Oh, that's good.
It's been really beautiful out lately.
Oh, good. Well, I'm excited about today's show. It's going to be a very deep subject because it's a very deep subject we're going to talk about. And with us today on the show is Nick DiNapoli, and he is an author, and he also has a thesis that he is working on that we're going to talk about today. We're also going to talk about the book that he has written called The Unity Project. But first, I'd like to welcome Nick to the show. Nick, good afternoon. How are you?
Hi, I'm doing well. Thanks so much for having me.
Awesome. So, question for you. How do you know Amy?
Well, Amy and I met at our joint place of employment, the Lighthouse Bookshop on Pearl Street in Boulder. I had sort of wandered in from the East Coast and found myself stumbling down the stairs into this amazing metaphysical bookshop. And one of the intuitives on hand, who just had such a huge heart and kindness emanating out of her eyes, happened to be Amy. And, you know, we sort of had a couple conversations and struck up a working sort of friendship. And then here we find ourselves.
Yay.
and
I
so,
can say the same
Nick,
about Nick.
Oh,
I mean, Nick is an extraordinary person. He's just got a very high level of integrity. He's a very good-hearted human being.
Oh, that's awesome. So, Nick, tell us what we're going to talk about today.
So what we had been discussing in the past couple of days, Amy and I, was sort of how the archetype of the father image is sort of implanted into both the individual consciousness and the cultural ideas of how to run society. That sort of patriarchal, in the sense of the father being the head of the family, has sort of inundated itself into almost every level of our experience, at least in American culture.
Mhm.
But
yeah, I mean, I've seen that quite a bit. Like people feeling so much pressure to be what their fathers expect them to be and do what's expected of them.
Yeah, and I mean, we see this largely, I think, a result of our Christian, or at least the United States Christian background. We have this idea of the All-Father, or the transcendent Father, that is sort of the head of the universal hierarchy of structures. But I mean, even if we look at like Buddhist cultures or East Asian cultures, you know, there are these hierarchy systems that are. You look at like a stupa, or even the Buddha meditating. It's got this pyramid sort of look to it, and at the very top, the Christians have put the ideal is this masculine sort of father archetype as a guiding hand.
The Trinity.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Well, so now, I question for you. Why do you think it is that many of us in this culture, and I can't speak to other cultures because I'm not from those parts, but in this culture, we tend to put our fathers on a pedestal, and we tend to spend our entire lives trying to please them, to be like them. Why do you think that is? And if that's the case, how do we break out of that so that we can live our lives authentically and who we choose to be, not through our parents?
So I've thought about this a decent deal, and it ties back to me, it seems, to the biblical scriptures. There's this sort of strange historical turning that happens when Judaism and Christianity come onto the scene, and that's really the fall into history. Before this, we didn't have a historical arc. We weren't trying to build the kingdom of God on earth. All the pagans were just sort of revering in their hedonism. But when Judeo-Christianity sort of came big onto the scene, we had an ideal, which was God, that we strove to be like. And we had a goal, which was to build the kingdom in his image. So in our striving to be like this perfected ideal, it seems to me that we took the notion of God and we sort of brought it down into more human, relatable terms so we could relate better to our ideal. And the person at the top of the hierarchy, generally, if we look at like chimpanzee societies, the person on top, the male on top, will be this sort of judicious overseer of things that sort of mediates conflicts, but also chooses to go to war. So I think it really comes from our symbol structure, our using of the idea of God and putting that into a person as a result of our failure to understand the symbolism behind it, which really sort of our connection to our Father, really, the intensity of that, I think, comes from the Judeo-Christian traditions.
It's interesting because in my own life, it's apparent and obvious. Now, my father's passed on now, but my sister, who is a little bit older than me, she was the oldest, and she spent her entire life trying to please him, trying to live up to what she perceived was his expectations of her, and it changed her entire life. She made choices with the intention of pleasing him, but he didn't respond to that, and so it became a dysfunction for her. Do you find in your work that a lot of people are in that boat where rather than looking to the ideal of looking up to him as our fathers, we end up becoming dysfunctional in trying to please our fathers?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, this is a common thread that a lot of people suffer from, not just Americans. And, it seems to stem out of this. It makes sense that we would want to live up to our fathers' expectations and their desires, even from a cultural standpoint, because that's sort of what gave our family safety historically, allowed us to put food on the table. You listen to the leader and your family doesn't collapse. The sort of problem with that is we've taken it into an age where there's so much individualization and there's so much capacity for the individual to really flesh out who they are as a person. We haven't left the models that were useful but might no longer be useful in the past where they may belong.
So how do we, as and Amy, I'm sure that you've had issues along those lines as well with your father, or have you, or I don't know. You tell me.
My brother had more of an issue with that. I'm trying to be careful not to say too much here. Let me just say that I went down another path. When I was about 18 or 19, I just kind of took off and became my own person, and I even went to start a new life in another state. And so yeah, I guess I went through some of that growing up, but yeah, no, it was more people pleasing other people for a while. I think in my early 20s, it was probably more just wanting to fit in society or make other people happy more than it was, my own parents. But I see it all the time, and I definitely saw it my brother. And my brother really, I mean, he suffered. He suffered as a result, and has come to terms with it now, and kind of mended a lot of what happened with our dad since then. So he's made huge strides there. It's really awesome. I'm really proud of him.
So, Nick, how do we, if we are in that paradigm, and I suspect that a lot of us are, that we honor our Father, because that's in the Lord's Prayer, for heaven's sakes, and honor our Father who is in heaven as much as the one that's on earth. But these people that are our parents, I always laugh, because these people, when my dad had my sister, he was 23 years old.
Wow.
Now, I'm older than that now, and I know that the being 23 years old does not make you material for being someone to look up to, because they make mistakes. My mom was 21. My mom was 21. She was just a kid. They all were just kids, and yet we put them on a pedestal. How do we get around that? How do we understand that and work through it?
Well, I think the most important thing to recognize is that everybody is just human. And I still have trouble with this. Sometimes I'll meet like incredible spiritual teachers, and I want to just like project the image of divinity into them. But, it's really important to take a step back from the idea of this sort of perfected, like they know everything that we might hold on to from childhood, because the reality is every being is having this bizarre, spontaneous occurrence called life happen around them, just as we are. And I think in recognizing that and recognizing how small we are, and in fact how small everybody else is, we can then relate to them from a different way that isn't so rooted in power dynamics between father-daughter, father-son.
Interesting. So now, even when you start looking at father figures, it may not even be your biological father that you look up to as a father figure trying to please them all the time. Is that also correct?
That seems to be so. I mean, there seems to be a larger archetype of like the father. It's sort of like this masculine, protective, loving entity. And I think like we can see traits of that in different people we come across in our lives. But, one being can only reflect so much of the grandeur of totality. There's the encapsulated ideal can't really be embodied because it is an ideal. It's something to shoot for, I suppose.
Yeah. I have a little story to tell you about that. And then you mentioned about spiritual teachers and folks that are in the spiritual realm and that you look up to them and so forth. Well, I had the radio show that I did, I had the opportunity to meet and interview some very interesting people like John Holland, the psychic, Neil Donald Walsh, Gary Zukoff, many, Dan Millman, who wrote his book about the Magnificent Warrior, I think it was called, or one of those.
Warrior, I think?
That's the one. Thank you very much. I was trying to pull that directly off of my head, and that didn't work very well. And as well as other people that have claimed to be spiritual teachers, all-knowing, all-encompassing. You wait for them to speak because what they're going to speak is the ultimate truth. What I've discovered over time after working with all these people is they're just human beings. They make mistakes too.
Absolutely. I mean, the first major red flag you should look for in a teacher is if they immediately declare, I am all-knowing and I am all-enlightened. That's flags up at that point.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. Yet a lot of them, and then you throw in the other concept of that they're out to make money from what they do, and that adds to that, and they're looking for people to follow them. And so that's and just like I guess just like our parents, our fathers, who want us to do what they want us to do, even if it's not necessarily good for us. So how do we get through that? How do you rise to your own power, Nick? Is I guess what I'm asking. How do you step into your own power?
Well, I think the first thing there are two sort of methods that I've come across that are effective. The first is what I call bottom up, and that's where you sort of start with your own, like, oh man, something's wrong with me. I'm not being able to fulfill my duties. Like, why can't I live up to this? And then you sort of work towards your goal from there. The second method that I think is better is called top down, where you start with the idea that you fundamentally are no different from these figures that you've put on a pedestal, in a sense, but the way their actions are coming through is just different than the way your actions are coming through. So then you look and you say, okay, so where's the gap? But the idea of stepping into your own power, I think, really comes from understanding that fundamentally you are no different from the great teachers, your father, anybody you come across. It's just the sort of packaging you've taken, the way you're expressing yourself is different. But I mean, that's sort of an experience you have to have. That meditation is incredibly important in recognizing the processes that go on internally. Contemplative prayer, even contemplative martial arts disciplines, to really put you in your body, to give you the view that you are whole and complete, just as anyone else is, I suppose.
Mm-hmm.
Amy, if you would use your gift and reach into the other side and talk to your guides for a second and feel into them, and because I sense that this is a big problem, and until we work through it individually, we're never going to get to where we want to go.
Well, it's ultimately just overcoming fear. And I think some of it is the fear of having to accept whatever consequences come. So sometimes we give our power away. Now, I only know this from having been through an abusive relationship. So that's where I gave my power away. And you let somebody else make decisions for you because you don't ultimately want to be the one responsible for what happens as a result. There's also guilt is a huge, what do you call it, manipulating point that the parents use and that the lover uses, I suppose, in those situations. So if you can realize how useless guilt is and how it really is used to fog reality, it's to disillusion you, then you can start to see your own truth through that. And I think just like any muscle, if you practice your own independence and not caring what the other person thinks and just being there for yourself, I think that's where you start getting your power. Being able to, it's the same thing as some people will say, well, don't get your hopes about something or you might be disappointed. Well, I say, go ahead and get disappointed. And if you know how to take care of yourself, you can pick yourself up off your feet. But that gives you a certain confidence that whatever I go out there and try and I might fail at, it's okay because I've got my back. So it's like about loving yourself and becoming your own best friend and going out and experimenting with being in your power and making a decision that is against what you think that somebody else would want. And then trying to see how that feels. Doing, underneath, if you want to look at the real reality of all this, is that if you're present, totally present in the moment, and you let go of all the ego stuff, then you're just essentially free. And none of this history matters, and none of the programming matters. But the truth is, many of us in society are still dictated by our egos. So we still are kind of imprisoned by those built-in beliefs and by those stories that we make up in our minds. But it is an illusion. Fear isn't real. And that's true because beyond this moment, if the only thing that has power over you is the thought of the past or the future, but really, where is the past or the future? But just in your mind. It's just something you're imagining. It's about as real as a dream. So this whole story we're telling ourselves that completely controls us is just in our heads. How do you know that when you don't just do something really powerful and confident and face that parent that scares you and say, I'm doing this, and I'd like your support in it, but if not, I'm still doing it, you know? Who's to say that if you were that much in your power and just said it like that they might be like, oh, wow, maybe I can see some areas in my own life where I can do that. It can go like, even like a lot of parents nowadays, I tell them, you are now the student. Like, you can switch the roles of this parent. You can become the parent. If you start becoming more dynamic, more powerful, more inspiring, you bet you can turn that whole dynamic around. But you got to step into your power and be willing to go outside your comfort zone to make that happen. Somebody's got to go first. And it's not fun for them being the leader either, because you can imagine the guilt that comes with that. If you're the parent and your kid is looking up to you like that, if you don't feel totally adequate being in that role or that job, there's all this guilt that comes along with it. It's like, my kid's trying to be like me, but I feel like a failure. Or as the kid stumbles along, you're like, that must be because of me. I mean, it's just pain all around, either way you look at it from every angle. So essentially, whoever can just be more either in the moment or more stepping out of your comfort zone and challenging yourself and just putting on those new shoes just to see what it feels like, then the more we're going to change the whole dynamic and the grasp it has over us. Does that make sense?
Oh, absolutely. You know, it's interesting that you would say something about the past and the present and the future. It's like, I interviewed a 4-time cancer survivor who had faced death 4 different times and had overcome each time. And those people I tend to put a lot of faith in, because they have faced it and they've come through the other side. Well, she said, she said this right there on the air. She said, if you have one foot in the past and the other foot in the future, you're peeing on the present. I said, excuse me? No, she said, no, if you're not living in the present, then you're not living. Because that's all there is. True. Is the present. And so it's imperative that we get out of that. And the other thing is, yesterday we did 2 shows, and when you talked about relationships, Amy, it brought up that for me, that when we talk about twin flames, that the relationship between the twin flames is co-equal. There is no leader, there is no follower. They are both equal, and they're working together, and they're cooperating together, and they're understanding each other. And so there isn't even the wife and the husband, though the husband is the leader of the household, and so she has to take a subservient role. That's not how twin flames work, is it?
No, and they explain a little of this in the Celestine prophecy, that whoever in that moment is in their element, let them lead. So, I mean, I know that I seem like really outgoing, but in some situations, I'm very reserved and shy. And it's like, it would be great, and this is what happens with twins, is your counterpart pops in right when you're feeling that way. Like, I might be feeling shy in a situation, he might pop right in and be the outgoing one, the one that like takes the lead at that point. It's an intuitive process. And when you both have respect for one another, and wherever you're at on your journey, then it's like, hey, it's like any other team. It's exactly like any other team. It's like, okay, I dropped the rope, so they're going to grab the rope and take it from there, and vice versa. So, yeah.
Oh, that's great. Nick, go ahead.
I found one of the greatest joys in my life in the past couple of years. I my first college was in Washington, D.C., and I spent 95% of my time shouting other people down for having ideas. When the experience of Satori was first, I had a Kensho sort of thing, whatever. I realized that I didn't need to take up the whole space, and the greatest joy has come from just having my body parked in a space in my academic circles, at work, and just watching other people flower and fill that space up. Because sometimes we're not the vehicle by which that space can be brought to its fullest sort of voluptuous nature, but other people around us are. I mean, if you view everybody in your surroundings as part of your team, the whole game sort of changes.
Mhm. I think that's the time we're coming into. I think we're leaving that old paradigm, and we're kind of calling it for what it is, and it's just a societal thing. That's all. It's just a belief system. I mean, Aborigines and some cultures that haven't been affected by our stuff are leading very much very different lives, and they are in their power, and they do work really well together.
I mean, absolutely. I just got back from a lecture. Actually, we were talking about the Tibetan people don't actually have a word for guilt.
Wow.
They have this sort of word that means it's like public repentance, like, ooh, like you got caught, so now you gotta sort of demonstrate your sorriness to the community. But they don't have that notion of internal self-loathing that we pick up when we deviate from our cultural set path. The Huichol Indians, the Mexican sort of Indian native tribe as well, they don't have a concept of guilt because it's not something that they preoccupy themselves with. Just such a radically different way to view how you move through the world.
Well, yeah, and guilt doesn't honor. And I know that I've said this a lot, but I think sin is negative feeling. Like any kind of negative feeling that you have, that's what sin is, because it keeps you from being in your power. It doesn't honor God. It doesn't honor your path. It doesn't enable you to be this bright light out in the world, no matter what the negative feeling is. But guilt's the worst because it's so useless. And, if somebody dies, we're supposed to feel guilty for a certain amount of time, or breakups or anything like that. It's like we're supposed to feel remorseful. And the truth of the matter is, from moment to moment, you can feel joy. You can feel any different thing. You can shift out of things all the time. And the only reason that you would stay in a feeling of guilt is reminding yourself of that story continuously. Oh yeah, that's that story I'm supposed to be believing right now, so that I walk around with a sad look on my face, so that I look like I'm doing the right societal thing here. But in reality, it's like, you can mourn something or break up or do something like that and just spring right back from it the next day and feel on fire and excited and passionate about your life. And that's truly honoring life. That's truly honoring your relationship with God. And that's like, why are we listening to those guilt trips? If somebody comes up to you, well, you should still be mourning, and you're like, you can do that if you'd like. Feel free. That's not something I want to feel. Why are you choosing that? And why are you making up that story? And why are you holding on so tightly to it? What's the purpose?
Absolutely. Just recognizing the events as phenomenal arising and not bothering with the labeling of guilt or sorrow or any of that. It's just stuff that's happening.
Mm-hmm. Well, and some of that comes naturally, and I think that there's this walk that you do where, okay, so I feel guilty right now. All right, so should I beat myself up over feeling guilty? Or do I just let myself feel guilty? I'm sure you've been there. So it's like, it's like, well, I think that we should honor the feelings that we do have when they do arise, but then realize that they are just based on a story that's just made up in your mind, or that somebody's fed you a line of for a long time, and just be like, that's just a story. So it's like, I have days when I'm upset about something or something happens, and I might get down, and I'm like, hey, cool, I'm down right now. This is awesome. So I'll just really go down with it, and I'll let myself complain or get upset or take a bath or whatever I want to do with that. But I spring right back from it because I'm so okay with it. Like the next minute somebody might make me laugh and I am back, just springing back to life. I'm not going to keep reminding myself, oh yeah, I'm supposed to still be mad right now. I really, I think that's just silly. When we can become malleable like that, it's like, it's okay you go down. That's part of still having an ego. But allow yourself to just be buoyant by not letting those kind of stories stick. Feel the guilt, be done with it. Feel the anger, be done with it. Feel whatever, and be done with it.
It's interesting, Amy, if you ask yourself the question, why do I feel guilty? And try and go inside yourself and to come up with an answer of what is it that has made you feel the way that you're feeling, then you can get out of it. Because a lot of times, it's just the story that you told yourself. It has nothing to do with anything.
Or programming from someone else, something they've always told you that you just never questioned.
That and getting back to the father things, that happens all the time because we tend to think that people in responsible positions know more than us. And so when they tell us you're stupid or you are not good enough or you're lazy or you eat like a pig or whatever it is that your dad says to you at one point or another, you take to heart and you did never question it. Well, you got to start questioning, isn't it?
Who do you think is making a bigger impact in this world? If you put two men next to each other, and one of them is saying, I'm not worthy of this, I don't have enough money, I'm really worried about how this is going to affect everybody, I don't know what to do, it's like, I don't even, is that person going to make a really big impact? Or this other person who's saying, yeah, all that's there, but I'm doing it anyway? Which one do you think is really going to bring more love to the planet? Which one do you think is going to transform lives? Which one's going to be an inspiration? Which one, you know what I mean? So then you think about it and you look at all of the men out there that have been through this dynamic and are still kind of stuck in it. It's like, what do you think God wants to have happen, or the universe wants to have happen on this planet? Do you think it wants all of these men hanging their heads down, feeling bad about themselves, being pushed around, having other people make their decisions? Do you think that's really what, God's will would be, or the universe's will would be? Or do you think it's for these men to rise up, for them to inspire and to get outside their comfort zone and run to their destinies, do something creative and passionate and different than they normally would do,
Oh, yeah. Oh, absolutely.
There's a pretty good
One creates miracles. One creates miracles, and the other keeps everyone stuck right where they've been. And it continues that cycle for many, many years, unless somebody's big and bold and brave enough to break out of that. That's what I call like the white lion. It's like, so many men know that they are good-hearted, really good men, that they are this white lion amongst all these normal lions. And yet they dirty themselves to walk amongst them and to be one with them. And it's like, no, take a bath, show that you're white, glisten in your whiteness, be the whiteness. What do you think Jesus did, You got to step out. You got to step out and be willing to be the white lion and stand out in the crowd and be proud of it. Sorry, Nick, go ahead. I cut you off.
Yeah, go ahead, Nick.
No worries. Just a small quote. It was like something like, the greatest people didn't wait for things to happen to them. They went out and happened to things. And I just think that encapsulates a lot of what you just said.
I love that.
Making the conscious decision to go and live your life, like for you, and not so much for anything else. But I think that really comes from people like actually knowing who, at a fundamental level, who they are, and that can be a trickier one for folks.
Well, and you think about it too, and there are like, gotta watch how I say this too, because there are like evil forces that are trying to like hold back people from being in their full power and being in their light. Where do you think the devil lies? but in the hidden secrets, in the people pleasing. That's where his game is. That's where he plays.
I mean, so much of Jungian psychology and even like Hindu Tantra thought is really like delving into those dark parts of ourselves, the shadow, grabbing that and the things that we're terrified of and making them part of ourselves, because that's the quickest pathway to growth. I mean, you look at the
you got to embrace the shadow side. Yeah.
Yeah, like King Arthur sitting around his court at the round table every night went out to go find the Holy Grail or the Jungian anima, the idea of completeness, and each night picked a spot in the forest that was darkest to them to begin their search. And I think that's
awesome.
Really, yeah, it's a wonderful metaphor for how we can start to take back our power. We really have to go after the things that scare us and make them strengths.
Yeah, and it's something that just popped in my head as a way to do that too, is to start to listen to your intuition. I know that that's more difficult for men, but sit quietly, or learn to listen to your intuition in any given moment, and then learn to let that lead you. And then you can sit quietly and meditate for even just 5 minutes every morning and be like, what would be your will for me today? And just sit and quiet and listen. I even I ask this question a lot. Like, what do you want me to do? And I'll go inward. Like this morning I was like, do you want me to park, 6 blocks away, or do you want me to go to the parking garage because of the snow and because I had a bunch of equipment and all of this? And I was trying to decide which way to go. I know that seems like a really silly decision, but I really like to listen to what God has to say about everything. So I'm like, which do I do? And I hope the answer is what I want, but it isn't always. And today it was, park 6 blocks away. And I was like, okay, I'll do it. And I asked that about my meals. I asked that about everything. And so I think if you train yourself to listen like that, I mean, everything is divinely timed so beautifully and perfectly too, that you got to learn to listen to those hunches, because you run into the perfect person at the perfect time because of you listening to that gut instinct. If you learn to listen to the instinct, then it's like you're going to be led in a more powerful way. So if you sit there in the morning and you're like, okay, how can I be my most powerful today? What is your will for me? And you listen to that voice speak back to you, and it says, go and do, and you're scared to do it. It's like, just go and do anyway. You know what I mean? You're going to train yourself.
Go ahead.
You'll see that what happens when you start to trust that is things work out. So you're like, okay, you just blindly follow and then see it work out, or take the consequences knowing that eventually the gift will be revealed. Because even in the worst of situations or things that look really glum and terrible, there's a gift in it. There always is. Everything is always being worked out to your greatest advantage, if we can just learn to follow what we're being led to do.
How many times, I know this has happened to me, and I'm trying to listen to it more, but how many times in our lives, as an example, you're about ready to leave the house and you get this message, oh, I should take this with me, or I should take my coat, or my umbrella, or whatever it is, and you say, nah, it's not going to rain today. And then it rains, or something happens. I have an exercise for everybody to do. Are you ready, Amy? I think this is really cool. What I'd like you to do, and you can verify whether or not this works or not, but what I'd like you to do is, tomorrow, don't set your alarm. When you get up in the morning, don't set your alarm. Don't wear a watch. You will intuitively know when it's time to get up. Set your intentions before you go to bed. I got to get up at 6 o'clock in the morning. Okay? Don't set your alarm. That's a huge leap of faith. But you will get up at 6 o'clock in the morning. I guarantee it. Now you might want to try this experiment when you don't necessarily have to be at work, and just in case you get in your own way. But at one point, you won't need to set your alarm anymore because you will intuitively know when to get up.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, and you, on top of it, to add to that, like, how about before you go do anything, ask, just go within and say, is this what I should be doing? Or is there another option? Just keep, like...
I feel the way you frame that has to be a little bit careful, I guess. Like if you're asking yourself or your own like divinity or something of that sort, then absolutely incredibly useful process.
Yeah.
The only reservation I guess that comes to mind is if it's in supplication to this sort of deity that you've like imagined. Do you know what I'm
saying? Yeah. Don't listen to the voice that tells you to jump off a cliff.
Yeah. No, there's certain.
This is following your greatest joy. This is being pulled to your happiest. It's like, I tell people sometimes that they in any given moment they have about 5 options they can choose. They can get on a phone call. They can go have lunch. They can call a friend. They can do any variety of different things. But I tell them choose your highest joy. Choose your greatest bliss. What's going to bring you to your happiest moment, and then go towards that, and keep training your brain to go towards that, because that's essentially where you're being led to your greatest joy. Through your being in that state of joy or eager anticipation is where you're truly being led from your higher self's perspective, I believe. So if you can align yourself with that good feeling every moment, and be like, what's the best for me right now, and go toward that, then you're gonna be, you're gonna climb higher and higher in your vibration toward that. Does that
seems to me that it seems to me that when you start talking about taking care of yourself like that, Amy, all the other stuff, all the other trappings, the father thing, the mother thing, all of that tends to just fade away. You don't need it anymore. And right. You can live your life more authentically, right?
Yeah, Nick?
Yeah, I mean, it comes from trusting yourself. I mean, what comes to mind for me is a gentleman named Aleister Crowley has his main tenet was do what thou wilt, capital W. So your highest purpose, do that. And once you figure that out, then you set yourself up for success. But
yes,
the second line in that is, do what thou wilt shall be the whole of the law. Love is the law, love under will. And the idea is to not let your immediate desire for gratification get out ahead of the plans you have for your highest good.
Yes.
But once
very profound.
Towards, yeah, once you see your highest good, you know where to go. That's really the game, though, finding out what that is for you.
Absolutely.
And by the way, we're talking with Nick DiNapoli and Amy Satori and myself. We're all talking about fathers and stuff, but I want to get into something, Nick, that is a passion of yours that you recently completed, and that is you're now an author. Would that be correct, sir?
Hooray! As much as that boosts my ego, absolutely. Or I'll call myself.
Well, and it's good. It's good that you're an author. Can you tell us the name of your book, please?
Yeah. So I wrote a book called The Unity Project: Meditations to Bust Anxiety, Fear, and Failure. But put it out.
And what's it about?
It's really a primer on a few meditation techniques. I started a sort of a spiritual journey, I guess, maybe a little over half a decade ago. And I kept running into things where I would read these huge esoteric treatises with these giant words that didn't make any sense to me because I had no context for them. So I wanted to write the book that I wish I had when I first started meditating. And this is sort of what came out of that effort.
Awesome. So would you recommend that somebody, if somebody, and we've talked a lot about this on the show, is that there's a point in time when everybody says, not everybody, but most everybody says, is this all there is? There has to be more. And that's when you begin your own spiritual search. So you would recommend, let me ask you, would you recommend that somebody go out and get the Unity Project as a way of learning a new way of being?
Yes. What I tried to do in the book was, at the very outright, I quoted my 8th grade chemistry teacher. And though I passed that class by the skin of my teeth, he said something that I will never forget, that all models are wrong, but some are useful. And if you can frame the way you live your life in a new model that is drastically different from your old model, then the way you start to interact with things in your life begin to change because you're relating to them from a different place, I suppose. But really what I designed it to do was to give people an idea that most of us are only using about a third of our available awareness, and most of that is in our narrative language center, the thoughts we hear in our head when we're by ourselves. But there are 2 other major portions of us that are also ourselves. One is the body. We feel and have sensory experience, but that has been sort of relegated away. I mean, people go to 9 to 5, you sit behind a desk all day or behind a steering wheel or what have you, and we lose this felt connection to our somatic experience. But the other part of the mind that we relegate into near obscurity is what I call the superconscious. It's that part of the brain that allows us to recognize patterns, see the beauty in art, the natural sort of rapture of nature. But these 2 processes that can't communicate to us in words talk to us in other ways. But most of us just don't know how to talk to them or hear what they're saying. So what my book is designed to do is to give people access to those 2 functions that are more than narrative consciousness at a deeper level than other lighter practices might be.
Well, that's interesting. That's interesting. So the superconsciousness, how difficult is it to access that over time, or is it just practice?
Mostly practice. I find most people are equipped with, we all have these things, like when you look at the Mona Lisa, or when people look at a cross on a wall, there's some kind of reaction that goes on there, even if we can't really nail it down in words. But because we see the symbol and we know internally that symbol's connected something to something, we have a reaction to it. But if you train the superconscious mind, then you can start to see larger patterns in your environment and in your culture, and you can start to relate to the world by manipulating those patterns in ways you would like them to be.
Up, are you there?
Oh, yeah. Sorry, I thought I lost you too.
Oh, okay. No, Amy, you still there?
I'm here.
Oh, very good.
I'm trying to cut out that noise.
Oh, so that's coming from your end.
It is. Let me mute it. You guys continue for a moment.
Well, no, okay.
It went away.
Okay. Well, that's good. So, Nick, how long ago did you write this book, and how's it doing?
So I wrote it last fall, I suppose. It took me about a month and a half to do the whole thing. But it's doing fairly well. My goal wasn't so much to propagate myself as an author, although it feels really nice to be able to put that on a resume. But I really wanted to give techniques to people that I wish I had, that would be easy and make sense and written in a way that isn't couched in such language where you can't understand what the author is saying. So my goal wasn't ever to make money so much as to make an impact on the people that in my life that I've interacted with that might benefit greatly from taking control of their minds and bodies back from a culture that has been hell-bent on taking away control at every possible junction.
Awesome. So if somebody wants to get a hold of the Unity Project, how do they do it?
It is available on Amazon in paperback and Kindle edition.
Oh, cool. So go, if you're interested in learning more about this work and what Nick is proposing, go to Amazon and get the Unity Project. And Nick, it's been great having you here on the show. We've enjoyed it, and I've learned quite a little bit from you. Is there anything that you would like to add in closing before we have to wrap up this podcast? Because Amy's got to go to work.
For sure. Well, I just wanted to say thank you guys so much for having me. This has been a joy and a half. And for anybody listening, we were talking about some heavy sort of stuff, getting out of under the thumb of a system that isn't out for your best interest. But, people should just know that the thoughts that come up in the mind are not them, that they have choice over what you're going to think about, what you're going to do, that, in fact, you can take your life back. You can take control and live a life that brings you joy and happiness and hopefully lots of peace. But it all starts with you, though.
Well said. Amy?
I completely agree. And just remember, fear isn't real.
If you want to find out more about Amy Satori, go to www.amysatori.com. If you want to book a reading with her, that's where you go. If you want to go to the resource page, that's where you go. You want to learn some exercises to self-empower yourself to move forward, go to amysatori.com. It's always my pleasure to be working with Amy. She is an incredible intuitive, and she can talk to your pets. She can talk to your dead loved ones, who aren't dead, by the way. They're just not here anymore. They're somewhere else. And she can also talk to people that are here that are in your life that you may not understand where they're coming from. She can help you with that too, which is an amazing gift, by the way, Amy. I like to access that all the time, because that's, we don't understand a lot of time, and this goes back to our parents again. We don't understand where they were coming from. We don't understand any of that, but you can help us with that. And I really appreciate that. Again, you're listening to The Satori Show. Go and follow us on thesatorishow.podbean.com and listen to all the shows. We've got quite a number of them up now. You can binge listen for a whole day if you want to now. So it's great fun. So on behalf of Nick DiNapoli and Amy Satori, my name is Kevin McDonald, and do something nice for yourself today. Do something nice for somebody else. Be kind and be aware. And we'll see you next time on The Satori Show. You've been listening to The Satori Show. Please visit Amy's website, www.amysatori.com, to find out more about this incredible talent. The views expressed during this podcast are those of the host, guests, and callers, and are not necessarily those of management or the owners of this podcast. What you need to know is that Amy is a wonderful teacher, guide, and communicator for the unseen world. What she does not pretend to be is a doctor, fortune teller, seer of world events, or predictor of what is to come. What Amy presents is real, based on her understanding of the world and communication with that unseen world. As always, you're free to decide for yourself as to what to believe. Regardless, we love and accept you completely just as you are. And thanks again for listening to The Satori Show.